Hello and welcome back to another video, and basically today I thought of starting a 24-hour reading challenge. It's been a while since I've done one, and I'm always kind of wary of doing one of those because usually something happens. Once I lost a lot of footage, and yeah, I lost a lot of footage, and in the other one I read a book that was so I didn't enjoy it to the level where I am kind of, not almost, I kind of had a literary breakdown while reading it and gave me a fit of giggles, but I decided to give this challenge a try. So let's start a 24-hour reading challenge. In terms of my TBR, I don't really have one set of TBR for this video. I plan on just going it with the flow. Maybe not the greatest idea because I have a list of books I want to read and also a list of books that I'm in the middle of. The only book I'm sure I want to read during this next 24 hours is this one book I kept seeing this boy on TikTok talking about. I'm I'm not sure. Should I start by a series, a book, or a book I'm already in the middle? I'm also in the middle of The Fall of Bradley? Yes, The Fall of Bradley Reed by Morgan Elizabeth. This is the third book in the Season of Revenge series, and it's a series. The premise of this book sounds really interesting, and I'm already, let me check here on my Kindle. I'm 14% in, and I kind of want to continue reading and see where it goes. Not my favorite at the moment, right at the beginning, but basically the premise of The Fall of Bradley Reed is that there is this young woman and she's left at the altar by her fiance, and after that fiasco she realizes that they were basically in a toxic relationship. He was gaslighting her throughout the whole relationship, and she decides to take revenge on him. But apparently, this man is also being investigated by the FBI, and her revenge is getting in the way of the FBI investigation. And then one FBI agent needs to intervene on her revenge, and apparently this is a romance novel between this jilted bride and FBI agent. So the premise sounds interesting, but also we have that one TikTok book. I think I'm going to start by the very unserious book. Hello, this is a later day Carol, and I'm just going to give you a brief update on this first book on the 24-hour reading challenge because I'm just going to cut off like 99.9% of the footage I have of the situation because turns out the book was just bad. So basically the reason I decided to read this first book, which I'm not even going to mention the name because it was bad, was because there was this boy on TikTok and he kind of jokingly kept recommending this book on his kids, and I was just so curious to know whether or not this book was truly good, because why was this boy recommending and pushing this book so much? And then I saw the description of the book and there was something about male pregnancy of a dragon, and that sounds so weird in an interesting way. So even though I knew this book wasn't the kind of book I enjoy, I decided to give it a try, especially after I searched for it online, and turns out it is available on Kindle Unlimited, and it is a very short book. It's around 77 pages long. It will take around 2 hours to read it, so I was like, why not give a try? Turns out this book has only 60 reviews on Goodreads, and it is really bad. So bad that I DNF'd even before I got to the male pregnancy of a dragon part, which is sad because that was the reason why I wanted to read this book in the first place, the dragon part. Because also when I read male pregnancy of a dragon, the first thing that came to my mind was the donkey and the dragon from Shrek. But yeah, it's not the same vibe as Donkey and Dragon from Shrek, because Donkey and Dragon from Shrek, it's iconic. The couple in this book, it's just gross. Okay, so we just reached 21 hours in our 24-hour reading challenge. Also, it has been a few days because I kind of been busy and I didn't have a lot of time to read, but yes, we just reached 21 hours. So 3 hours into the challenge, I just finished reading Letters to the Father by Kafka, and that book, it is around 70 pages long, and it's basically a letter from Kafka to his father, with whom he had a very difficult relationship. I only read one other Kafka book, which was in Metamorphoses, but after reading Letters to the Father, Metamorphoses, it has a whole different meaning. It just put things into perspective, and it was a very interesting book. But now let's move on to the third book I plan on reading in the next 21 hours, and that is L'Occupation, or it was translated to English as The Possession by Annie Ernaux. And apparently this is a book about a woman after the end of a love affair, and I'm kind of excited. I already read 4 books before, and 3 of them I really enjoyed. One of them I DNF'd, so I don't know. I'm interested to see if this will be a hit or miss. Personally, I'm really enjoying the fact that the letters, the font, it's quite big actually. Hello, so we have 13 hours 40 minutes left on this challenge. Where can I put this? But basically we have 13 hours 40 minutes left on this challenge, and I finished one book and I did a good way through another one. So I finished The Possession by Annie Ernaux. In this book we follow Annie as she breaks up with this, it's not exactly a boyfriend, I would say it's more like a situationship, and then a few months later, her situationship, who she calls W in this book, he announces to her that he is moving in with another woman, and from that point on, Annie, she goes on this, she spirals on jealousy, and it's a really interesting read. One thing I really enjoy about this book and about Annie's writing in general is that it feels so unique. I think one good way to describe her writing style is as if her books were like those highly produced vlogs, or it's kind of like her books are a video from Life of Riza, I think that's the name of the channel. She puts this story, which sometimes it's a flattering story, sometimes it's not a very flattering story, and she talks about it in such a vulnerable way, but also in such a beautiful way. I really like Annie's writing, and I ended up giving this book 4 stars. One thing to say about this book is that as I was reading, I couldn't help but think about that book called I'm a Fan. I never read that book, but the plot of that book, I have a feeling that if you enjoyed The Possession, you might enjoy that book, or if you enjoyed I'm a Fan, you might enjoy The Possession. But take this with a huge grain of salt, because I never read I'm a Fan, but I did read The Possession, and I definitely enjoyed it. And then the other book I was reading, I continued to read The Fall of Bradley Reed, and at the beginning of this challenge I was 14% through this book, and now I'm 75%. And this is also, it's kind of a longish rom-com, it's a long rom-com. It's 402 pages according to Kindle, and I'm currently exactly at the third act, Conflict, and so far it's interesting, I'm having fun, and the conflict, it makes total sense. So I think I'm going to spend the next hours of this challenge trying to finish this book, and then we can figure out what I'll read next. So I just finished the 24-hour reading challenge, and if you are counting on how many days it took me to finish the challenge, then this was a fail, because we're not gonna talk about how many days it took me to finish the 24-hour timer. In my defense, it has been quite a busy week, but technically my timer didn't really ring because I stopped the timer at hour 2 hours 40 minutes because I just didn't want it to ring at the middle of the night. But technically I read more than 24 hours. So the last time I checked in, I was reading The Fall of Bradley Reed. I was right at the end. I finished that book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It's cute, it does its job, and that's all I have to say about the end of the book. Then I moved on to reading The White Album by Joan Didion. The White Album, it's basically a compilation of essays that Didion wrote between the 1960s and the 1970s. It is a very hyped up, popular, cult classic kind of book, and I'm not gonna lie, I had very high expectations for that book, but throughout the reading process of the book, I really enjoyed the first part of the book, which is called The White Album, but on the other 3 parts of the book, it was very hit or miss. There were some essays that I really enjoyed, and there were others where I felt myself drifting off while I was reading them, so very hit or miss. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I would still highly recommend this book if you like journalism and more of a non-fiction, more of a journalistic style of storytelling. And by the time I finished reading The White Album, I had around 4 hours left of the timer, and I didn't really know what to read that would fit the right amount of time, so I decided to just start reading Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This is the 3rd book in the Dreamland Billionaire series. It is also the final book, and I just felt like reading it. If you don't know what the Dreamland Billionaire series is about, it is a series of 3 interconnected standalone romance novels that follows 3 billionaire brothers that are heirs to a Disney-like empire, and their grandfather recently passed away, and he left each of his grandsons a task to complete so they can get access to their inheritance. Cal's task was to spend one last summer in his grandfather's lake house and then sell it. The only problem with that is that the grandfather left the house to both Cal and also his ex-girlfriend Alena, who is now living in that lake house with her 5-year-old daughter. I was very excited to read this book just because I really like Cal in the previous 2 books in the series, and it didn't disappoint. I really liked his character development, and learning about his addictions. And this is a surprisingly long book with around 600 pages, but in the end it does make sense. I think those 600 pages were needed because it deals with heavy topics around grief, around alcoholism, around trauma, and also the story needed a time where we follow Alena rebuilding her trust on Cal, and also, you know, the redevelopment of their relationship in order of this second chance romance to make sense. And I think it was really well done. This is definitely my favorite book on the Dreamland Billionaire series. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and the reason why my timer stopped at 2 hours is because I reached 2 hours at around 25% of the book, so I knew I wasn't going to finish that book until that timer started ringing, so I just paused it, and then I finished reading the book and just forgot to turn it on again. Yes, that's it for my attempt at reading for 24 hours. Technically, I did read for 24 hours. Did it take me multiple days? Yes. And by the end of this experience, I'm very confident at saying that I don't think this kind of challenge is for me.